So my message is, why wait? I mean, why wait for that type of crisis to get about the business of change? And when we can begin to then decide who we no longer want to be and remind ourselves of those unconscious programs and become conscious of them. Well, I think that this is a time in history where people not only want to know, but they really want to know how. And because information is so readily available and people are waking up to the idea that they can drop their guard a little bit and trust in the unknown or trust in the unseen and open their hearts, there's a big listening, I think, that's taking place globally around the world. And so the last few months, the last couple of weeks, my book became available in the United States, and it's doing very well, and the response is very good. And the workshops really that we're teaching in different parts in Europe or in the United States or in South America, in Asia, people really want to embrace the quantum model of reality and begin to look at how they can apply it to their lives and begin to track the changes that they make. And the end result of all of that is empowerment. So for me, I'm humbled and I'm honored to have the opportunity to contribute to people's lives. And certainly the greatest joy that I have is to see people transform and make a difference.
Is there another trap that you start seeing yourself trapped into? I mean, you're teaching this, but it seems like there is always something else and something else then come. And even when we're encountering success, and there it is again. Is it ever ending?
Well, I think it's layers of an onion. We peel away different aspects of ourselves. And for me, I run a lot of different things at the same time. We're now working in corporations in the United States and in Europe, bringing this model of change to companies, transforming individuals to help them transform a culture or an organization. And essentially change starts with the individual. So for me, as long as I make time for myself, I think that's the greatest challenge, to work on myself, to be the living example of everything that I teach, to have time to contemplate new and exciting adventures, and then create a team or a staff or a support system that helps me to reach those dreams. So yeah, it's challenging and it's a lot, but it's also very exciting. I mean, this is the greatest time to be alive right now.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book, because the subtitle is How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One. So your book suggests that we have to lose our mind, right? But in a state of really joy and inspiration, and not in those moments of, or before, reacting before there is this tragedy or this huge crisis. Is that really possible to make this change?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. For most people, they wait till they reach their lowest denominator, the point where they can't go on business as usual anymore, and they begin to examine themselves. When you have a loss or a trauma or a crisis, and you reach that point where you can't live as the same person any longer, this is the moment of reckoning, because this is when you begin to observe the way you're thinking, notice how you're feeling, and become aware of how you act or the habits that you demonstrate. And that function in neuroscience is called metacognition. Metacognition is our ability to pay attention to who we're being. And because of the size of the frontal lobe, it allows us then to begin to modify our behaviors to do a better job in life. So my message is, why wait? I mean, why wait for that type of crisis to get about the business of change? And when we can begin to then decide who we no longer want to be and remind ourselves of those unconscious programs and become conscious of them, the end result of that is something magnificent. The next thing we start to think about is who we do want to be, the thoughts we do want to put our energy behind, the behaviors that we do want to demonstrate, and those elevated emotions where we lift ourselves up and open our hearts. Well, when we do that and just speculate possibilities and think about new ways of being, that simple process begins to circuitry-wise create new levels of mind in the brain and begin to install the neurological hardware to look like the experience has happened. At the same time, as you emotionally embrace what that future would look like, you begin to epigenetically signal new genes in new ways, and your brain and body literally change just by thought alone. Now, if we do that every day, the process of reminding ourselves who we no longer want to be, and then reminding ourselves who we do want to be, we begin to move from living in the past to living in some future. So the biological model of change requires both unlearning and relearning. It requires breaking the habit of the old self and reinventing a new self. We have to lose one mind and create a new one.
There's a quote I wanted to read and ask you to comment on in your book that says, we should never wait for science to give us permission to do the uncommon. If we do, then we're turning science into another religion. Don't you think that that's the real issue, really, that science had become a religion, and we have to always have those tangible proof to move forward?
Well, you know, the new science, Lilu, tells us that we're not doomed by our genes, or that we're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our life. That the contemporary model of science, if you blend quantum physics with neuroscience and the study of the mind, and neuroendocrinology with our feelings and genes and how we, cellular biology, how we function and make proteins, we stream all those things together, people begin to look at the reality from a different point of view. Now, what I mean by that is, if we wait for science to give us permission to do something uncommon or unknown, then we're limiting our abilities. If we go out and do the uncommon and we use science to say, God, this could be possible, let me see if I can signal my own genes to change my health. And we really make an effort to do it. Once we do it once, we should continue to do it over and over again, because if we can do it over and over again, anything that's repeatable is a scientific law. Once we're able to develop that skill or that talent or that ability, now science has to come and study you and I and say, what exactly are you doing inside of you, in your mind and body, that's producing some result outside of you? And that correlation begins to give people the understanding that they are in control of their destiny, which is what this is all about. So if we wait for science, then we're turning it into another religion because we're making it an authority. This is an age of information where anybody can research anything. You don't have to go to a library anymore to find out valuable information. You could just get online and you can begin to learn all these philosophical and scientific truths. But the question is, now that you understand it, now that you philosophically, theoretically, intellectually get a good idea what we're talking about, what are you going to do with it now? Take that information and apply it and personalize it and set yourself up for a new experience so you get to live the truth of that knowledge. And then when you start to do that, and enough people start to do that, we're going to see a nice transformation on the planet.
What do you think some easy change, what are the easy changes? I mean, some that we could see right now or experience in our life that could be a first step to bigger changes? Are you seeing common denominators and things that first needs to change before other ones can change?
Well, I think, aside from us becoming aware of ourselves, I think another important element really is that we have to continue to learn. And we have to begin to understand that we have to make an effort to investigate possibility. And so if you don't like war, you better start arguing with your next door neighbor. If you don't like political deception, stop lying to people in your life. If you don't like the way corporations are taking people's money, then start giving. We have to, as an individual, demonstrate everything that we'd like to see in terms of change in the world. So if you pray for change in the world, but you feel guilty, that's mind and body in opposition. We have to get mind and body aligned. And when we do, that's called a state of being. When mind and body are working together, our thoughts and feelings are aligned, now we're in a state of being. And we have to then demonstrate that in every corner of our life. And when we do, we give people permission to do the same. Now they're seeing that you're demonstrating a certain ideal for yourself, and instead of them falling back into a lesser expression of themselves, they're going to model your behavior. And so where in the world do we see greatness? where in the world do we see ideals for people to emulate? We have to be that. We are the people we're waiting for, and we have to make that effort across the board. And so, coming out of your, waking up in the morning and deciding what is the greatest expression of yourself or ideal of yourself that you can be, and you say, I'm not going to get up until I am this person. Well, you're going to have to wrestle with those hardwired thoughts, those habits and emotions that we memorize and become addicted to, that become part of our identity. And when you break free from the chains of those past states of mind and body, the side effect of that is called love. The side effect of that is called self-love, or a respect for life. And when you're no longer living as that same person energetically, you can step into your world and no longer react in the same predictable way. And now you have true freedom, true genius, true opportunity.
And yet, as we're changing, we're meeting adversity. Sometimes we feel like we're treated as fools because there's this intangibleness, and there's this feeling place, and there's things that even we have a hard time to put words on, that we are feeling, that we can sense, that we can. So how can we deal with that? Because it feels like sometimes we either withdraw, or we shut down, or we have all those little habits. And then we're not ourselves, and then we're back into this old cycle again. And I think this is what a lot of people face right now. And I say we because we're all there. We want to be equipped. We want to be, not armed, but we want to be ready. We want to live our truth now. It feels like more than ever, It's like, bring it on, I want to be free. And then poof, you hit a wall, you hit a conversation or a person or a loved one or something. So how do we do this?
Well, this is a great conversation. I mean, first of all, we come preloaded with all the biological machinery to make this possible. You and I are anatomically prepared to face adversity in our life. Now, the bottom line is this. When you look in the mirror, you get a reflection and to see who you are. You see your face and you know that's your identity. Well, how do we as souls begin to evolve? The reflection is our environment. So we have to face adversity in every area of our life to bring out our greatness. Not to fall to anything lesser, but to step out into the unknown and be willing to be an individual. Now, in history, all individuals were persecuted. They were all ostracized. They were all considered foolhardy and insane because they stepped outside of convention. And anything that challenges convention, the current beliefs of the time, is always challenging mediocre minds. But when they were able to actually execute change within themselves, in a community, in a country, they were considered geniuses after that. They were considered saints, mystics, noble men and noble women. And so when we step out of convention, we have to be willing to look unpredictable and foolhardy in a certain way. But that then gives us the ability to reach out outside the box of what our reality tells us to be true. So what are we left with when we do that? We're only left with our own resources. You face challenges in your life, then you have to say, what piece of knowledge could I apply to this situation that I could modify my actions to produce a different result? How can I be different in these same situations? Now, again, you look at culture, you look at media, you look at corporations, you look at advertising, you look at television and movies. Those are false ideals that have nothing to do with our true greatness. Our ability then to overcome conditions in our life, our ability to step outside of the normal then requires constant attention. So you see people in your life, whether it's family or peers or staff members or whatever, and you react to them emotionally. The moment you react, you return back to the same emotional self. So then change then is to be greater than your environment. This is why I wrote the book, because I want people to understand that if they get up and see the same people and do the same things, go to the same places, have the same experiences, create the same emotions, then they're living life from the same personality, and the same personality creates the same personal reality. So then you have to cultivate a new mind and a new body to be ahead of your environment, to be ahead of the needs and the cravings and the habits of the body, and to be greater than time, to live actually in a future reality in the present moment and be beyond our senses. Now that takes a good amount of effort, but it also yields a tremendous reward. And I say that every great person in history already understood this. They were embracing a future in the present moment beyond their senses, and everybody considered them unpredictable or foolhardy until they began to instill change. So we come loaded with all the machinery to do this. The hardest part of all of this really is just making the time to do it. That's the hardest part.